I have narcissistic qualities. There are things about me that are narcissistic. It doesn't mean that I'm, kicking my dog or stealing money from people. It means, I think I'm valuable.
I have to stop you there. Why do you think narcissism is getting such a bad rap? Why then? If we think it's not such a good thing then?
I think we like convenient labels to vilify other people. And narcissist just seems to be one of those that we have used to vilify. I don't know what movies or whatever it is, but there's something in the media zeitgeist that has allowed us to say narcissists are bad, therefore it's the label for bad people, right? They're all bad. And the idea of a narcissist is a very different thing than saying, yeah, I have narcissistic qualities. There are things about me that are narcissistic. It doesn't mean that I'm, kicking my dog or stealing money from people. It means, I think I'm valuable, for example. And that's a narcissistic thing. Do I look in the mirror? Did I look in the mirror before I came here? Yes, maybe once or a few times, right? And that's a little bit of narcissism, right? And so is it a problem? No, but in psychology we call it othering. It's a way of othering, right? It's a way of saying you're different than us, right? You're different than me. The reason that you cheated on me is you're like another species. Another way of saying pseudo-speciation is a more technical way of saying othering. It's a way of creating psychological distance and blaming the other person for their personality, right? This is the fundamental attribution error again. It's you as a person, the reason that you got in a car accident is because you're a bad driver. Mm-hmm. But when I got into a car accident, no, I'm not a bad driver. It was the light got in my eyes, et cetera, et cetera. So we make excuses for ourselves, but we vilify other people for their faults. And so I think it's a lot of this kind of, we want to distance ourselves from people who we think that are dangerous or bad or hurt us, and words allow us to do that. Like, this is a narcissist. And then the girlfriends tell the girlfriends, right? This girl says, that guy over there, he's a narcissist. And so now it's like this is your reputation, right? So Bob Hogan, who's a very famous personality psychologist, he would say what reputation is the social kind of capital you have that you've earned as a function of the way you've behaved over the course of your life.
So how can you use it practically to advance in society?
Great question. So the research is almost exclusively on the bad side. Why is this? I call it the low-hanging fruit problem. It's that it's easy to study dark traits in relation to dark behavior. So how might it be good? Well, for example, some jobs, being narcissist might be advantageous.
Like having a podcast.
The quadnan, but also being a public speaker as well. Being a public intellectual, being narcissistic is beneficial because it allows you to approach threats without losing your cool, right? So it's like in psychopathy literature, it's called fearless dominance. So narcissism, and of course this aspect of psychopathy, would enable you to go towards danger, right? And there's a lot of contexts under which you need to go towards danger, not just the military and being a policeman and all these kinds of things, breaking speed records, all these kinds of things, and trying new things. When you're unwilling to try new things, this is your lack of narcissism being a cost, right? So not narcissism in this super negative way, but it creates an approach orientation to the world. What it does is it creates reward sensitivity versus a punishment sensitivity. Right. So when you try new things, you fail. And if those failures stop you, well, then that's the end of the game. But the narcissist is a little bit dumb, deaf, and blind to those failures. Not totally, but is that I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep trying. And so they soldier on in the face of those failures. And so a lot of the world's advances are probably a function of someone who was a little narcissistic who said, no, I believe in myself, right? I can do this. I would even venture that my PhD was driven a little bit by my narcissism in the sense that I had lots of people who were like, no, you're not good enough. You're not going to be successful. And I didn't literally say, kurva, and I'll show you. But I was like, no, I will do it. And I did. I could think of a former supervisor who said, the thing about Peter is he says things really loud, but he's always wrong. And like, well, okay, well, here I am, buddy. Right? Like, I've made it. Have you made it? Have you? Yeah. Hi. Right? That's kind of, So the kind of, not dumb, but it helps us pick ourselves up off the ground and get out of bed because it drives us. Now, it doesn't mean these people don't have mental health problems, right? So narcissists often have depression, for example. It's not uncommon that they have depression, but the depression may be a long-term consequence of the accumulated failures that some narcissists who failed to rise to the challenge that actually have. Also, narcissists can become socially isolated. And so if you've pissed off enough people, you can become socially isolated. So we have this loneliness epidemic that we talk about now, being very lonely. And they talk about how, we have lots of friends, but we never see those friends. And so people are lonelier than ever. And I think that's true. We're very self-absorbed, right? So the rise in narcissism in the Western society kind of keeps us away from our friends. We're busy doing our own thing. But what I think it also does is, maybe bringing us to the relationship stuff, is we don't put in the effort we need in romantic relationships, right? And so narcissists are very drawn to things like Tinder because it gives the appearance of lots of options.
Right.
So it's like, okay, well, this relationship wasn't perfect. He was this or she was that. Well, I'm just going to go on Tinder and find someone who's a little bit better. This is called being a maximizer. So we know that people on the dark triad are maximizers. Narcissists in particular, maximizers. They want to maximize the benefit. But our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, really weren't maximizers. They were what are called Satisficers. So Satisficers is a combination of sufficient and satisfactory. And a funny little story about this. I put this in a paper of mine, and one of my students back in Australia was, beating her chest over my success. And this guy wrote, he said, it's too bad that he spelt me. He had a typo in the first paragraph of the paper, and I knew what he meant. He meant this word, satisficing, right? And so I say, ask this guy what word he's talking about, right? And so she reports back to me, and I go and I screenshot the definition, and she puts it up on her Facebook, and he kind of like, he barely apologizes, right? He kind of like shrivels away, shrinks away a little bit. He doesn't say, oh, I'm sorry, I was wrong, right? So satisficing. Satisficing is find someone good enough, and you move on with your life. Like my grandmother is not even, she's still alive. This is my father's mother. She's alive in Florida. She could have lived a very different life, but she found a man who was good enough. Was he the best man? No way.
But she knew there are best men out there.
And there's always another option. But our generation, and especially the ones in their 20s now, the Generation Z, I guess, it's like on crack now, right? It's like there's always, the grass always seems to be greener, as the great Justin Bieber said in one of his songs, right? So we're always trying to maximize. Well, this person, he's a little too bald, or he's an inch too short, or these kinds of things. Like where you're nitpicking about things that you don't really need. It's like, I think I can do better. And the narcissist thinks they can do better. And then the narcissist finds out they can't. And then they're alone. And this might be why they get depression, is because they have run this maximizing delusion to a very high degree. This may be why, for example, a lot of women, they find now that something like 45% of women between the ages of 25 and 45, in another 10 years, will be single. An unprecedented proportion of women in the ages that people tend to get married and have kids will be single and will never get married.
Wow.
Because if they have built up this kind of narcissism in themselves, I can do better. I can do better than this guy, right? So I'm making 200,000, euro. I need a man who makes at least 300, 500. You see this on the internet.
In this interview, it's like
these girls who are 19, 20. Oh, he has to make 250,000. Really?
Yeah.
Like that's crazy. Like that's a lot of money, right? And so 70,000 used to be in the States, right? Okay, this is enough, right? This is like a good number, right? No, more. So no one wants the sufficient. The problem is it is symptotes, right? So the benefit you get from making more money at a certain point hits a hysteresis point, and it starts to decelerate, right? So it starts not to decelerate. The increase of benefit is not as steep.
Yeah.
Because you've got enough now. We've got a nice house. We go on the vacations we want. We've got the clothes we want. Everything's good. Now it starts costing you a little bit because it's time away from the family.
You have to stay there.
Right? And you have to maintain. So, but if you've got, 70, 80, 100, something in this range, my life is good. Right? Why are we we're so trying to, we're always competing with the Johnsons. We're always comparing ourselves to our neighbors, right? No, my life is good, right? I could go get another job, right? So why don't you go back to America and be a professor in America? Why? I mean, yes, okay, in Poland they don't pay professors amazing. We all know that. Dokładnie. So, I'm happy here. I have my dog's life is amazing. My life is amazing. I'm 46. I'm satisficing on this. Like I've done, but also I'm a little older, and so I've been through the maximizing phase, and I've been like, this doesn't pay off.
When did that start?
I would say it started as I approached my 40s. It started. I realized that, and I would say I probably found it late. Okay. I think people from my generation found it earlier. Most of my friends, like my fraternity brothers from University of Connecticut, married, kids, all this already, and they're happy with their lives, right? But I want more. I'm gonna go live in Australia for 9 years and be a professor, and then I'm gonna do right. And the essence is, well, what do I have to show for it now, right? I mean, my life is good. I have nice clothes. I have a nice dog. I live in this amazing city. I get to do podcasts, but what matters in life is social connection, right? And so the asymptomatic function where it went like this for me. Right? And so now I'm in this is why you're single, because you've overinvested in the wrong thing. And so as a warning to the people listening, be sensitive to these points in your life where it's like the whole point of accumulating status and wealth for a man is to build a family. Women aren't really interested in the money per se. I mean, of course there are women, right? Mm-hmm. But on average, that's not what they're interested in. Do you have sufficient resources to have pillows on your couches? And then we move on with our lives.
So with all this knowledge, actually before we transition, I wanted to know, before we just to close this topic, now that you have this insane amount of data, research, and knowledge, how does that affect your relationships? For example, you know what is a narcissistic is, look like, sounds like, behaves. Does it impact you, worsen, better your relationship?
I would love to say that it makes me better at detecting, say, red flags.
Right.
But I would say it almost does the opposite, because what you learn is all of the nuances and all of the, let's call them excuses, all the reasons. And so you become a little bit more tolerant of people's imperfections by learning, okay, this person might be acting angry or saying a rude thing, but then you don't allow your emotion to take over and judge them negatively. Okay, well, let me try to understand this person. So it's almost a curse of being let's say a psychologist, is that you might actually get abused more because you're so busy trying to understand why you're being abused that you take abuse. You're like, well, okay, that was one time. Let me see again, and then another time, right? It's like academics in this way are a little bit stupid, and that like we need more data to draw a conclusion. Whereas the typical person is like, one shot, you're done, right? No second chances. But I think the academic, especially in psychology, is likely to be much more forgiving and be like, okay, I understand why this person might be this way, and let's see if we can work through it.
I see.
Yeah.
So, okay, now, like I said, again, with the knowledge and the research, if someone wants to improve their love relationship, because you've done also a lot of research on the romantic and sexual relationships, correct? What were the most interesting or surprising findings?
Well, this is one of these fields that there's, again, 10,000 studies by 100,000 different authors. It's very hard to condense it all because, you as a research team might have a list of these 7 criteria meeting, and another team has another group. And so the general trends are there are relatively universal patterns in what men and women want in their romantic and their sexual partners. But it's a question of what are those particular traits. And what matters more, the things you don't want or the things that you do want? So the intuitive question that had been asked for most of the research in this area was very, okay, well, I want to know what someone wants in their partner. Just tell me what you want. And it's true that you can do it this way, but it assumes that people are aware of what they want, right? That they have a deep understanding, which there is some doubt to whether this is the case, because what you might think you want doesn't necessarily translate to what you choose or who you end up with. But what you want probably comes second to what you don't want. And so up until about 2015, when the first paper was published, there really hadn't been much consideration of this idea of deal breakers. Mostly the research was on, no surprise, deal makers. They weren't calling them deal makers. It was just what do people want. So the deal maker is easy, right? It's just what will make you say yes, right? But I think what comes first is what makes you say no. So there's 100 people who want to date you. You call 90 of them because they are, let's say, too old, too fat, what else? All kinds of criteria. Too demanding. All these things that you don't want, and you accumulate more deal breakers as you get older as well. So the criteria, the bar raises and raises and raises. So what happens first is you reject all the people you don't want. I mean, it could be anything. It could be hair color. It could be even sexual orientation, right? So this person you have a suitor who is the same sex as you. Well, they're off the table because maybe you're not homosexual, for example. So you call out, right? And so this takes the pool and it shrinks it down a lot. Now you have these, let's say, 10 people left. Now you work on the deal makers. Deal breakers act as a filter because there's too much everything in the world. There's too much information. Right. There's too much this. So let's take the online dating space. So women might use a filter like height to filter out all men beneath a certain height, right? And is it really like you want 6 foot? Is 5'11" really the end of the game, right? And maybe if you met a guy who's 5'11" out.
5'11" is like 185 centimeters?
Yes, sir. Yes, of course.
We're in Europe.
Of course. Sorry. Yes, of course. As an American, we refused there's a story I heard. It was like they were when America was going to adopt the metric system, there was a boat coming over and they had the standard weights.
Right.
And the boat sunk. And so we don't have the standard weights in America to do the metric system. But
what is this with the 6'5"? Because I see it's a lot in the
the 3 6s. It's
Can we check how much is 6.5? 6'5" inches in centimeters?
Yeah, I mean it's like
is like 180.
It's like 2 meters, 180.
No, 2 meters is too hot. No, 180 centimeter. 6'5" is very popular. I hear it all the time from American girls.
I think they say
6'5" inches is 16 centimeters.
No, it's no.
6.5.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, 6. What they're saying is 666, which is 6 feet tall, 6 figures, and it's either
Inch to feet, not inch.
Wait. This is crazy, man.
6 feet 5 inches.
Yeah.
198.
Siri, what's 6 feet 5 inches?
2 meters.
2 meters? No.
198 and dot 12 centimeters.
Woman wants 2 meter guy. Is this a joke?
There are some women who do, but what the saying is 3 6s, right? So it's 6 feet tall, right? Or as we've discussed, it's a less than 2 meters, but tall, right? Then it's a 6-figure salary, and the last one is either 6-pack or 6-inch penis. Okay. So,
oh my!
So there's this thing called the female delusional calculator. It's literally called this in the States that someone has created, and it draws on census data. And you can go in and you can put in the criteria that you want, and it shows just how delusional this kind of thinking is. Is that you might think 100,000 is nothing, but I think kids have no idea how much money, for example, their parents make. So they're like, oh yeah, 100,000. It sounds like a good number, and we round up too. So wow, 70 might as well just make it 100, right? So I think knowing just how unreasonable people's mate preferences are is worth knowing. But that's what this 6-fit criteria is. It's about these are systems
filtering
that are allowing people, in this case women, to filter out. So men might do the same thing with weight. So men feel the way about weight the way women feel about height. Now we vilify men's preferences and we reify women. So it's a celebration for women to you go girl. But if I said I want a woman under 55 kilos, let's say, oh, you're sexist, you're this, you're that. But no one says anything bad about a woman for saying, oh, I want a guy who is this, this, and this, right? So this is a kind of misandry kind of system. This is a sexism towards men is what we have going on here. But both sexes filter out people who are not for them, right? So if I meet a woman who is not a particularly gym-oriented person and I go to the gym 6 days a week, which I do, then you know what? That's okay. Filtered, right? So we don't go to it's like a monopoly. We do not pass go. We do not collect $200. You don't go to the next step. So what deal breakers do is eliminate going to that initial step, right? But now we're going to talk to one another. You're at a bar. It's always my favorite example. You see people from a distance. You decide whether they're attractive enough. There's this constant argument about no, looks don't matter, get the hell out of here. You see people from a distance. The first thing you don't know if they're nice, you don't know if they're funny, you don't know if they're anything. All you see is I like their shape. That's it. It's always visual first, and people, especially feminists, really object to this idea because they are tied up in this idea that you have to choose people on more meaningful characteristics than their physicality. But physicality drives whether you're turned on by someone, which is what makes babies, which is the whole point of pairing up in the first place, kind of evolutionarily speaking. If you don't find someone physically appealing, and I'm not saying they have to be Mila Kunis or Scarlett Johansson or Sydney Sweeney or any of these things. If you don't want to kiss that person, then it's a non-starter. You never get there. And so when there's 50 people in front of you at the bar, yeah, you judge them. You're judging everyone. You judge tall, height, fat, everything, all this kind of stuff. So looks always start the equation.